World War II Facts and Lies. World War II altered the course of history, but do we really know the facts behind the most devastating war humankind has witnessed? In this video, we will uncover the truth behind World War II facts and myths. Everything from covert intelligence operations that misled Nazi bombers to the brutality and torture committed even by the heroic Allied forces. Misinformation has become commonplace in our world today, and some wrong takes on history have cost us way much more in terms of our dealings and communications. This is why it is important to learn the facts behind commonly believed wartime history, and bring to light shocking realities and a deeper understanding of the actions taken on all sides during humanity's darkest era. The Ghost Army. Fact or myth? Fact. An ingenious battalion of creative illusionists helped clinch victory through elaborate fabrications that convinced Axis forces of imposing enemy strength where none existed. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops specialized in elaborate battlefield deceptions. Numbering over 1,100, the Ghost Army tactically positioned inflatable tanks, artillery, and illusionary encampments to trick aerial reconnaissance about Allied numbers and locations. One Phantom unit spoofed a force of 30,000. In truth, only 1,100 men operated a wandering ghost army. Through impressive visceral trickery with inflatable decoys, the talented ghost army tactically confused Axis forces in Europe, providing cover, diverting enemies from real operations, and saving lives with their creativity. Their sonic deception trucks could mimic the sounds of entire divisions. This success led the unit to serve as a traveling theater troupe to bolster troop morale after the war. Code Talkers. Fact. Indigenous peoples speaking threatened native languages found an unlikely ally and avenue for honor in World War II military service, sending indecipherable secret communiques. The U.S. Marines recruited several hundred Navajo recruits fluent in their unwritten native tongue to become code talkers, relaying frontline messages by field radios during battle. Using the complex Navajo language, they translated letter by letter into English to relay secured codes. Their impenetrable codes in a little-known dying language were integral across the Pacific, most famously during the Battle of Iwo Jima. Philip Johnston, the son of Protestant missionaries raised on Navajo land, conceived the program knowing the language's linguistic intricacy would allow safe battlefield communications. Johnston's fluent proposal to fight fire with fire resonated after Pearl Harbor. Navajo recruits developed the only oral military code never cracked in modern warfare. Their service brought honor to demonized tribes and their language. Nazis focused on Patton. Myth. Could the Desert Fox's German tank forces truly have feared their rival Allied commander as public legend assumed? Or did history invent myths about the infamous general later lionized on screen? Films frequently portray the Nazi German high command as obsessed with legendary General George Patton's position and activities, seeing him as the Allies' most feared commander in field battles. Indeed, Patton himself eagerly promoted his growing persona for posterity from Sicily to the Bulge. Despite this enduring public legend, however, historical scrutiny proves German command only vaguely noticed Patton, until D-Day in mid-1944, when he was placed in charge of the U.S. Third Army. Previous to this late arrival, the Germans paid him little special heed compared to other Allied generals despite his flair for media attention. Intimidated German personnel taken prisoner later fed Patton's members the mythos that their defeated Desert Fox rival, Erwin Rommel, had long obsessed over his counterpart. But in truth, the two tank tacticians barely knew each other except by lofty reputation on both sides, until Patton stood atop Europe's charred battlefield remains. Contrary to films portraying the Germans as overestimating Patton specifically despite his taste for glory, records show the Nazis only ranked America's most boisterous general as a mid-level threat for most of history's deadliest war. No evidence supports the common belief of early extra-German attention to Patton's whereabouts or plans. His limited battlefield role failed to justify such a fixation during the Allies' slow ascendancy. Germany as highly mechanized. Myth. Germany must have overwhelmed Europe early on through panzers and mechanized assault, Or did the Nazi war machine rely on more primitive modes of mobility shrouded by propaganda? Nazi Germany's dominance came from strategy exceeding technology in battlefield mobility, contradicting the image of the Wehrmacht as a mechanized juggernaut. Of 135 German divisions used in the swift 1940 France invasion, only 16 were armored units with tanks. Most divisions relied almost entirely on horses pulling guns and supplies into battle. Even during the stereotypical blitzkrieg offensives, 75 to 80% of German combat troops depended on animal transport, not motor vehicles. Compared to highly motorized French forces, Germany fielded fewer tanks. Germany often used captured foreign armaments to offset production lags for its overextended industry to keep pace. While genius commanders like Rommel and Guderian perfected armor tactical shock value, acquiescent newsreels created exaggerated impressions through selective footage that inflated German mechanized strength. From Barbarossa to the Bulge, Wehrmacht cavalry remained the unsung workhorse. Propaganda footage fostered durable myths that Nazi forces won through mechanical might, yet the reality of Germans' outdated mobility left the vaunted Wehrmacht heavily reliant upon lowly horses, not tanks or trucks, contradicting assumptions. Hitler's iron leadership. Myth. Hitler governed through absolute authority over odd subordinates, or did recurring insubordination secretly plague the German war effort under a surprisingly challenged supreme leader? Hitler publicly cast himself as an unquestioned Führer whom the Nazi military structure served with unwavering loyalty. Behind the scenes, however, he faced frequent high-profile insubordination from strong-willed generals opposed to his strategic leadership. Navy Commander Erich Raeder openly shouted down Hitler in staff meetings. Erwin Rommel routinely ignored orders on battlefield decisions in North Africa. Anti-Nazi sympathizers like Admiral Wilhelm Canaris used intelligence postings to leak military secrets, and even plotted failed assassination attempts against Hitler. The most damaging defiance saw Wehrmacht brass launch a disastrous coup hours after D-Day, nearly killing Hitler. And frontline officers regularly absorbed tens of thousands of Russian POWs against race-based troop policies. Far from wielding absolute control, Hitler navigated recurrent insurrections from his own war machine. Jetpacks. Fact. Both sides dreamed of individual soldiers streaking through the skies on fiery backpacks during history's deadliest conflict. How close did engineers come to making military jetpacks a reality? Revolutionary individual rocket flight concepts took tantalizing form in competing late-war military science labs. As Allies tested a jumping jack rocket belt for nimble scouting maneuvers, Nazi Germany made further headway by developing a brutally named Himmelstürmer, or Skystormer jetpack, to leap behind enemy lines. The temperamental Jäger-Rakuten units promised 25 minutes of flight at speedy 60-mile-per-hour ranges. Though riveting in theory for shock troop maneuverability, thundering jetpacks proved impractical to deploy safely amid combat conditions. Flammable hydrogen peroxide fuels, short ranges, exposure to anti-aircraft fire, and challenges steering proved prohibitive. Nonetheless, the war drove dramatic progress as engineers raced to perfect back-mounted flight, however fleetingly, during the 20th century's aviation revolution. Germany almost won. Myth. Germany's blitzkrieg offensive stunned Europe early on. Were the Nazis truly near triumph before the Allies regrouped and reversed the Reich's fortunes? Hitler's repeated early conquests cultivated impressions abroad that the Third Reich seemed for a time unstoppable, a juggernaut overwhelming continental resistance through relentless mobile campaigns. Poland and France fell in mere months as Britain narrowly averted invasion. This fostered post-war assumptions that the Nazis came shockingly close to victory, with calls of "what if" around hypothetical invasion contingencies, like Britain or Russia falling. However, most historians counter that by late 1941, with Russia reinforcing, Allied counterattack became inevitable, with systemic Nazi material disadvantages gradually sealing German downfall over a prolonged multi-front war they lacked resources to economically sustain or replace losses at scale. Only speed swiftly toppling all enemies could have averted Hitler's doomed collision course. By mid-war, Nazi fortunes substantially depended on foes' errors, no longer their own decision. Bat bombs. Myth. Declassified files reveal shocking mad scientist plans proposed by American researchers to weaponize flying rodents for firebombing Japan. Was there truly merit to the unconventional murderous mammal proposal? Info. An oddball Air Force plan first tested in 1942 proposed dropping bat populations with timed napalm firebombs attached to Japanese cities under the codename Project X-Ray. The bats' use promised incendiary mayhem through innate shelter-seeking instincts, directing them into building nooks ideal for burning targets down via triggered explosives. While briefly field-tested in mocked-up Japanese villages and loaded bats were transported to readiness, the project was eventually abandoned by 1944, before mushroom clouds sealed Japan's fate, as deployment challenges scaling up to substantial city-level chaos proved excessively daunting and unpredictable for the leashed living weapons. Though briefly viable on paper, maniacally creative bat bombs joined pigeon missiles and other outlandish schemes discarded as impractical by war's end. Bat bombs emerged not as a frivolous flight of fancy, but calculated military investment seeking to weaponize nature's creatures, with proposals surviving initial viability scrutiny. Declassified plans testified to shocking lengths air power visionaries contemplated before atomic bombs terminated the discussion. Suppose Axis obsession with Patton and German mechanized might are nothing but enduring myths, well-planned attacks with plague-flea weapons and living bat bombs are facts. Complex threads underlie oversimplified notions of World War II as a binary struggle between Allied good versus Axis evil. The realities of wartime propaganda, unstable allegiances, and ethical transgressions on all sides speak to the nuanced human dynamics underlying history's most devastating conflict.